morning. There's a bit of an echo. I'm Molly Brinkerhoff, today's worship associate. Welcome to you, old friends and new, young and old. Welcome to those of us in the sanctuary and those who are here virtually. You are an essential part of our gathering today, whether today is your first or your thousandth Sunday in our midst. We are stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. So before we get started, we do have a few announcements. So first off, please silence your phones so that it does not disturb the service. If you're watching us virtually, if you're able, please sign in on the chat box so we know who is joining us. We will be having joys, sorrows, and concerns today, and if you are here in the sanctuary, please fill out a piece of paper at the entrance. And if you didn't email them to the worship team now is the time to send them virtually. Put them in the chat box so a candle can be lit for you. Please indicate if it is a sorrow, concern, or a joy. Reverend Kevin will be scheduling a short class for those interested in becoming a member of our church soon. If you're interested, please email him or talk to him today. We are in need of cookies, am I correct? Still in need of cookies. So if you're interested in just making up a batch and bringing them some Sunday, and if they don't all get eaten, they'll freeze them and use them in next week. So please bring some refreshments. We are still looking for greeters to meet people at the door. It's a good way to learn people's names and get to know other people in the congregation. So if you're interested in being a greeter, please, again, contact Reverend Kevin. So any other announcements that I haven't mentioned? Okay. We will now move into the sacred time of worship. Settle yourself, relax, and take several deep breaths as I ring the peace bowl. And I will ring it 3 times. Our covenant, along with our 7 Unitarian Universalist principles, is our guide to how our congregation will relate to each other and the world. As I read our church covenant for us all, please recite it with me. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And we will now be lighting our chalice, and if you have a candle or chalice available at home, please light yours with us. This chalice lighting is by Leslie Takahashi. We gather as many drops, each winding our own path down life's surface and ruts. Here we pool together as a single body, flowing together for a time. Together we are a stream, at times even a river. For with our shared force, we can travel toward oceans of meaning and seas of connection. And I understand that last week we reinstituted our community greeting, which we did before COVID. So I invite you to stand and meet your neighbors and just mingle we'll give you a couple minutes to say hi and get to know other people. I wasn't expecting this, so I wasn't too worried. I'm like the school marm, back to your seats. Okay, then
Well, good morning again on this beautiful, almost spring morning, so it's a beautiful sunny day. Our call to worship this morning is the poem Hillside Stream in Early March by Deborah Alexander. Replenished with rain, it rushes on. Its brown water pours and spills like vinegar from the pickle bottle, tumbling over, bubbling through the jagged jumble of rocks. Those early plants pushed aside to let it pass. Its running melody ringing clear, competing with the robin's call. The stream pushes on. Its cheerful song belies the chill beneath as it strives to outrun winter, while the fragile sun sighs, too soon, too soon. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 38, Morning Has Broken.
springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
As part of our service this morning, we are creating a spring altar to celebrate the spring equinox, also known to many people who follow earth-centered spirituality as Ostara, named after an Anglo-Saxon goddess. This is something that anyone might do at home, too, to celebrate the season, regardless of the spiritual path you follow. The idea is to place objects on the altar that have special meaning to you for some reason, especially objects that represent nature or the earth-human connection as we transition from winter to spring. I invited everyone to bring an object this morning, such as a flower, a rock, or a feather to add to our spring altar. It could be just about anything. You can leave them here or take them back with you after the service. And if you didn't bring something this morning, please feel free to bring something next week. I think we will keep the altar in place for a few Sundays at least through Earth Day. You can simply place your object on the altar beside us, or if you like, you can briefly speak about why you chose it. I will begin, and then please come forward as you wish. What I brought this morning is this soapstone carving of a loon and a chick done by some unknown Canadian native artist. And you see these in souvenir shops all over Canada, and the tradition of carving soapstone like this is very old, and they've made useful implements out of it as well as just art. And the reason I brought this is because I like the symbolism of the loon and the chick, because spring is a time of rebirth, and nothing symbolizes that more to me than seeing the first chicks emerge from their eggs and celebrate with their families. So that's what I brought this morning.
My mother planted 5 roses, and despite my neglect, despite last brutal winter, they just stay alive. And so I was out uncovering the roses. I finally put burlap around them, and I trimmed this off because you've got to trim roses, and it looked pretty dead. But then when I looked at it, it has green. So to me, it's very significant for death making way for life, and life making way for death. And of course, I owe this to my mother's planting.
So I didn't know we were doing this today, but I'm pagan, and one of the goddesses I worship is Gaia, which is the embodiment of Mother Earth. And this bracelet is one of her favorite altar offerings, and I was wearing it today, so that is what I am placing on the altar.
Looking out the window from our kitchen table, all I see is trees. They look like dead trees. There's nothing on it. But when you go close, you can see that now there are buds on the trees. So to me, this is the rebirth of spring.
In our house, we have an altar set up in the memory of our daughter Rachel, and I try to keep spring flowers, fresh flowers, or sometimes candles, other things. And these are flowers from this week's flowers on my daughter's memorial.
I brought this object. It was made by my friend many, many years ago, and it's for colors. Colors are coming back.
Good morning. The story I have to share with you today is titled We Are Water Protectors. It was written by Carol Lindstrom, who is Ojibwe, and illustrated by Michaela Goad, who is a Tlingit. They're beautiful, beautiful pictures. A little too intricate to share, but I will have this at the coffee hour afterwards. And I encourage you to come and look at them. The illustrator is the first Native American and the first person of color to have won the Caldecott Medal, which is awarded to children's books for their illustrations. So that's nice to share. Water is the first medicine, Nokomis told me. We come from water. It nourished us inside our mother's body as it nourishes us here on Mother Earth. Water is sacred, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. The river's rhythm runs through my veins. It runs through my people's veins. My people talk of a black snake that will destroy the land, spoil the water, poison plants and animals, wreck everything in its path. When my people first spoke of the black snake, they foretold it would not come for many, many years. Now, the black snake is here. Its venom burns the land, courses through the water, making it unfit to drink. Share this one. Take courage. I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together to stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, the trees, rivers, and lakes. The earth. We are all related. Tears, like waterfalls, stream down, tracks down my face, tracks down my people's faces. Water has its own spirit, Nokomis told me. Water is alive. Water remembers our ancestors who came before us, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. We are stewards of the earth. Our spirits have not been broken. We are water protectors. We stand. The black snake is in for the fight of its life. And we will now sing our children upstairs.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Cute. Especially love the peacock cape. I want one of those. Where can I have one? So, ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. We take this moment in our service to reflect on our joys, sorrows, and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. So, do we have any joys and concerns? From Victoria, this is a joy. She said, last night's symphony and local ballet dancers were fabulous. We are so lucky. A joy from Vic Allen. His mother turned 91 last Thursday. She still lives on her own and still drives. That's fabulous. While she no longer runs horses, she still lives on her horse ranch up the Coos River in southwestern Oregon. She was a horse rider, huh? Yeah. Cool. From Siren has the joy. They are oh, excited. It takes me a minute to say I am out of my lupus flare-up, mostly, and I'm back to attending with all of you. We are glad to see you. During that time at home, I can say I have deepened my spiritual self, and I'm very proud of that. Cool. And a joy from Kat. Got to hike more and spend time in the sun with friends downtown. So cool. And do we have any virtually? Okay, so when we light one more candle, to celebrate or for concerns for all those that are in our hearts that we are not ready to share right now. May we remember those who have spoken, those they have named, and those we hold in the silence of our hearts.
Our reading this morning is from the book Sacred Water, The Spiritual Source of Life by Nathaniel Altman. Because it is so essential to life, water is the primordial element underlying myths and legends around the world. Early Egyptian creation stories recount that the sun god Aten reposed in the sacred ocean Nun, whereas the Babylonians believed that the gods and later all living beings arose from the fusion of salt water and fresh water. In the first chapter of Genesis, the Spirit of God is described as stirring above the waters and creating a firmament in the midst of the waters. And in Isaiah we read, "For in the wilderness shall waters gush out, and streams in the desert, and the parched ground will become marsh, and the thirsty land springs of water. And through it will run a path for them which will be called the sacred way." Water divinities appear in the mythologies of many past and present cultures, including Greek, Hindu, Celtic, Maori, and Native American. Connected primarily with sacred lakes, rivers, and waterfalls, springs, and wells, water itself is often depicted as a living substance that is the primary element on earth. Although the early Judeo-Christian teachings tended to avoid veneration of natural phenomena, we have numerous bodies of sacred water. The Jordan River, for example, is sacred because Jesus was baptized there. Many New Testament events took place around the Sea of Galilee. The Holy Well of Chartres, the Chalice Well of Glastonbury, and the Holy Grotto at Lourdes are among the most sacred Christian sites. Because we humans are dependent on water for survival, we have maintained a special regard for it since the beginning of time. The sacredness of water has been one of the most important aspects of nearly every world culture since the dawn of civilization. But today, many of us have come to view water as an insignificant and dispensable resource. We have fouled it with sewage, fertilizers, and industrial waste. And we squander millions of gallons of it every day through poor water management, leaky aqueducts, and wasteful personal habits. But water is not an insignificant commodity that can be used or misused at will. Every well can run dry. Water becomes sacred when we recognize its powers as a sustainer of humans, animals, and plants, as a means of transportation, as a vehicle for cleansing, initiation, or gaining wisdom, and as a source of inspiration or enchantment. Water is perhaps the oldest symbol of life, sustenance, abundance, fertility, movement, generosity, permanence, and strength. Sacred water is all around us, from the tiny drops of morning dew on a spider's web to the thundering cascade of a tropical waterfall, in the salty tears we shed and in the summer rain that we embrace. An offering to support the mission of this church will now be given and gratefully received. Well, today is St. Patrick's Day, so I thought it would be a good day to talk about a little bit about Celtic spirituality. And since United Nations World Water Day occurs later this week on Friday, March 22nd, 2 days after the spring equinox, I thought it would be a good time to acknowledge the way that water is essential to life and to explore how water has been venerated as sacred in Celtic spirituality and in the spirituality of other peoples historically. As the reading this morning described, water is fundamental to life on earth, and it is not surprising that it has been recognized as the primordial element underlying myths and legends around the world. It is believed that life emerged from the waters of ancient shallow seas. And I think we've always felt some deep mystical connection to water as a species because of this. We owe our existence to this blue marble water planet that appears to be one of the rarest planetary forms in the cosmos. Our beautiful blue boat home is a rare cosmic jewel indeed, and it is the blueness of the waters that enthralls us when we look at images of the earth taken from space like the one on our pulpit. I have one of these photos hanging in my office, and I often find myself gazing at the image when I'm lost in thought. It is the striking blue more than the continents that catch your attention, as well as the swirling white clouds, which are also water. Set against the inky black void of space, the image of Earth fills me with awe every time I look at it. Everything that has ever happened in human history occurred on that blue planet. And every civilization and every religion emerged around the waters of her oceans and rivers. Rivers like the Tigris and Euphrates, the Nile, the Ganges, the Yangtze, the Danube, and the Mississippi. It is a sacred image, if ever there was one, and I am glad we proudly display it on our pulpit. Earth has been called the water planet because of this abundance of water that covers about 71% of the Earth's surface. But there is still no consensus on how all this water ended up here in the first place. According to the Planetary Society's website, there are numerous theories about how Earth got its water. Most fall into two categories. Either Earth was born with the molecular precursors of water already present, or water-laden space rocks like asteroids and comets brought water here after the planet's formation. It is likely that there were multiple sources involved, but we may never know for sure. What we do know is that most of the water on Earth is in the form of salt water contained in the oceans, totaling an estimated 321 million cubic miles, which represents about 97% of the total water supply. Of the 3% remaining that is fresh water, 3/4 of that is frozen in the polar ice caps and glaciers. So only a fraction of all water is available to support all the animals and plants that depend on fresh water, which of course includes us. And this represents all lakes, rivers, streams, and underground aquifers, as well as the atmospheric recycling of water through evaporation and rainfall. Life may have evolved in the primordial seas, but ever since we moved out of the briny depths, our existence has depended on a daily replenishment of fresh water, and it is a precious commodity we need to conserve. If you have ever been truly thirsty, I mean on the verge of serious dehydration, you can appreciate the sacredness of water, and you will probably never take it for granted again. In the search and rescue world, there's something called the rule of threes about how long a person is likely to survive without air, shelter, water, and food. And for water, it is about 3 days. After that, depending on conditions, you will likely perish. And in a very hot environment, this can happen much faster. I've never pushed it dangerously close, but I can recall a few times on backpacking trips when I was becoming desperate to find a water source. I remember one time in particular on the Appalachian Trail in Maine when a tiny, muddy hillside seep was the only water source available after miles of thirsty hiking. And though we had to strain the muddy water through a bandana before attempting to run it through our water filter, it seemed like a beautiful, life-giving crystal spring to me at the time. Just thinking about that makes me thirsty almost 32 years later. So I'll take a drink. I have tended to carry more water than on hikes than I think I will ever need ever since, because even a slight degree of dehydration can result in medical problems and just feeling lousy. Even our pre-human ancestors understood the need for water, and as human cultures evolved, water was recognized as part of an interdependent web of life-sustaining relationships. Within many indigenous cultures, water is still venerated as a living entity with its own spirit, much more than a commodity or resource. And as a sacred entity, it is seen as being in a reciprocal relationship with humankind. We depend on water, so we must protect the water in return. As Chief Stuart Phillip of the Penticton Indian Band of the Okanagan Nation described in a recent interview, water is the lifeblood of Mother Earth. It is everything to us. Water is sacred, and it's a symbol of our sovereignty. In modern times, there's been a reawakening to this sacred relationship among many indigenous groups, and examples can be seen from the Maori legal victories to protect sacred rivers with legal rights in New Zealand, to the protest of water protectors against the Dakota Access Pipeline at the Standing Rock Reservation, as described in our children's story this morning, to the Carriers Project that seeks to recognize and amplify the traditional importance of women and Two-Spirit LGBTQ folks as protectors of water among the tribes of the Pacific Northwest. Here in the West, water rights have been contentious since the earliest days of colonial settlement. And with a changing climate and growing population, the future looks even more troubling. We would do well to look at indigenous attitudes about our relationship with water for guidance in the days ahead. But I doubt our governing officials will be able to overcome their inherent prejudice and arrogance. At least there is some hope in the legal battles initiated by Native American tribes on behalf of water and fishing rights. One local example is the effort to remove dams along the Snake and Columbia rivers and their tributaries to restore salmon and other fish populations. It is a hotly contested issue that has created an interesting coalition of Native American tribes, environmental groups, fishing sportsmen, and even some Republican politicians. Agricultural interests are obviously very important in such disputes over the control of water, but responsible parties of all persuasions have begun to recognize the importance and urgency of managing precious water resources for long-term viability, even if they are not yet ready to see water as part of a sacred web of life. Just like our Native American neighbors, those of us from European roots have ancestors who once believed in the sacredness of water. And as mentioned in the reading, there are vestiges of these sacred feelings about water in many of the holy sites venerated by Christians thousands of years later. And there's probably no better place to witness the blending of ancient pagan spirituality about water with contemporary Christian spirituality than in Ireland. There is archaeological evidence that the land we call Ireland today was first settled as early as 12,500 BCE by Neolithic people who moved across Europe. They were ethnically different from the earliest people who arrived in North America, of course, but culturally, they were probably very similar. Hunter-gatherers who lived in small villages. The history is debatable about whether the earliest Irish people were replaced by the first Celtic tribes known as the Milesians, who arrived in Ireland around 500 BC, or whether old and new people simply assimilated into the people we now call Irish. There is scant archaeological evidence, and the pre-Celtic people, known as the Tuatha De Danann, are part of a quasi-mystical origin story. They are often described as more fairy-like than human. But whoever they were, one of their goddesses, Eru, became the namesake of the lands the Celts called Erin and we called Ireland. And like cultural transmission throughout human history, there are myths and religious artifacts still present in contemporary Celtic spirituality that date back thousands or even tens of thousands of years, including the veneration of numerous sacred wells, springs, and other bodies of water throughout Ireland. By the time St. Patrick is alleged to have arrived in Ireland in the 5th century, pagan traditions, including veneration of water, had become an indelible part of the lifeway of the Irish people that even the saint could not erase. Like other ancient peoples, the Celts considered water to be sacred and a mysterious element. It flowed through the earth and emerged from springs. It was probably magical in its ability to connect this world with the other world. They recognized its practical value and essential importance, but it could transform from liquid to solid to vapor and back again. Like other animistic people, water was seen as part of a living web of relationships, and we were even born within the waters of the womb. As one contemporary Celtic spiritual writer describes, water can hold memories, and perhaps that is why the sacred wells are so important, as they connect us to a past when we knew the earth was alive. And so were the trees and the plants and the stones, and of course, water itself. Today, Ireland is home to over 3,000 sacred wells that have probably been visited as holy sites for thousands of years. Though the story is historically debatable, like much of early Irish history, St. Patrick is believed to have been born as a Welsh slave of Roman parentage who later moved to Ireland and then escaped to Rome, where he studied to become a priest. After becoming a bishop, he was sent to Ireland to convert the pagan inhabitants where others had failed. Unlike his predecessors, St. Patrick wisely chose to integrate existing pagan spirituality into an earthier flavor of Christianity that would be more appealing to the local population. And so the Celtic and pre-Celtic gods and goddesses became associated with Catholic saints. This translated into the many sacred wells becoming associated with these saints, and typically each well was known for healing properties related to a specific ailment. Visitors to the sacred wells would pray and leave offerings and seek the miraculous healing powers of the water. In ancient times, the help of the associated god or goddess would be invoked, but after Christianity, the saint's intercession would be requested. These days, with the rise of neo-paganism in Ireland, both kinds of venerated entities may find their names invoked in the prayers of the afflicted. I doubt St. Patrick would be overly pleased, but I imagine he would accept the deep cultural connections between the people and the sacred waters. In addition to the sacred wells, many springs, waterfalls, and rivers in Ireland are considered sacred or have mythical stories associated with them that often feature tales of Celtic gods, goddesses, or heroes. A common theme in these stories involves gaining wisdom in an encounter with the waters or with a magical salmon who dwells therein. Many Native American myths feature similar stories of initiation, learning, and mythical creatures associated with watery locations. It also reminds me of the way Shinto kami deities are believed to inhabit special water features in Japan. There seems to be something archetypal and mystical in the human psyche about the places where land and water meet, places where we might anticipate an encounter with the sacred. And given water's ability to extinguish life as well as to sustain life, there's a degree of awe and wonder around water features that adds to this mystical attraction. It is no wonder that water has held a spiritual significance for so many cultures throughout the ages. Water is a blessing for the developed world, and most of us give little thought to the ability to turn on the tap and receive clean water in abundance. Of the Earth's roughly 8 billion people, about 1 billion do not enjoy this blessing. And about 3 billion do not have access to adequate sanitation to avoid polluting the precious fresh water that our lives depend on. And the way we abuse our water supply in the developed countries by dumping toxic chemicals and agricultural runoff into the system, and by wasteful consumer and farming practices, you might think that fresh water was an unlimited or self-renewing resource. In 1995, the average American household consumed 326 gallons of water each day, about 100 times more than the people in developing countries like Cambodia or Honduras. And although innovations and restrictions have reduced this somewhat over the last few decades, it is still far too high. It is true that salt water can be desalinated and made into drinking water. And this is an important fact in some parts of the world. But desalination requires significant energy and technology to accomplish, and it is impractical for supplying the world's growing demand for fresh water. A better and obvious option would be to conserve our existing water with improved practices and a greater respect and appreciation for this source of life. One might even say that a renewed reverence for the sacredness of water is far overdue. I suggest we have much to learn from the ancients of all cultures about the sacredness of water, regardless of our spirituality or scientific understanding of the world. At a minimum, we should pause occasionally and give thanks for the gift of clean water that sustains our well-being and grows the food that nourishes our bodies. And I think we could all benefit from regular visits to the water's edge, whether it is a tiny local stream, the banks of the Snake River, or the seashore, or Niagara Falls. You never know. You might just encounter a salmon of wisdom. Take some time to appreciate the sacredness of waters wherever you find them. I invite you to rise in body or spirit once again and join in singing our closing hymn, number 175, We Celebrate the Web of Life.
We celebrate the web of life, its magnitude we sing, for we can see divinity in every living thing, a fragment of the perfect whole in cactus and in quail, as much in tiny barnacle as in the great blue whale. Of ancient dreams we are the sum, our bones link stone to star, and bind our future worlds to come with worlds that were and are. Respect the water, land, and air, which gave all creatures birth. Protect the lives of all that share the glory of the earth.
Our closing words are the poem The Negro Speaks of Water of Rivers, by the Harlem Renaissance poet Langston Hughes. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers.
We will now extinguish our chalice with the following words. Please join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. After the postlude, please join us downstairs for refresh. Oh. What? Oh, okay. Okay. We're socializing upstairs. That's new for me too. So. Except for second Sunday. Except for the during the potluck day. Yeah. Okay. So meet me in the other room after the postlude.